Okay, can everyone hear me? I think that works. Cool. Hello, guys. Hello. We would like to start the meetup, or officially start. I think everyone got already together. It's so great to see a room with so many people, especially with the .Kusama community. I will let everyone find a seat, or also find some space in the back if you want to stand. Great. Yeah, hello and welcome again. I'm again very happy to see so many faces here, and specifically from the Polkadot and Kusama community. Today we are going to talk about parachains. Okay, we'll do this in a second. My name is Zoe. I'm Global Head Ambassador of Events for the Polkadot Network. That means that I am organizing events or support also ambassadors around the world to host Polkadot and Kusama events. I'm super excited again because today is the first in-person meetup this year for all of us. And yeah, we have actually pretty cool content for today. We have two speakers with us, Ben and Santi. I will introduce them in a second. And both of them are going to give a presentation each. One presentation about where we stand in the ecosystem, and then we go more into a technical talk about parachains and slot auctions. And afterwards, I'm going to moderate a short fireside chat, and would also like to include you guys. So please raise your arm afterwards and ask some questions. We can go into a discussion. And we also have people from the live stream here with us. Hello to everyone that's online that cannot join in person today, but we also try to include you guys. So if you're on a crowdcast live with us today, feel free to also ask a question in the Ask a Question box, and then I will try to include also the people that are online into the discussion here today. Before we start, I would like to, and now I have to change these, these slides, one moment. I think this works. Now I also want to promote 3 more points. First of all, the Sub-Zero conference, one of the biggest developer and blockchain conferences coming up online, 13th and 14th of October. So if you haven't registered yet, just register, because it's very cool content, cool speakers. As always, I think in Parity or Web3 Foundation conference is always great content. And also a little side note, just look out for some pre-events on the 12th of October around the globe. Also, we have communities everywhere, so if you have connections to the community, we maybe host some social events, and then we can connect all in person again before the online conference starts. On another note, also Parity and Web3 Foundation are hiring, so we have a lot of job openings. If you guys are interested to find a cool job in the ecosystem, we have Emily here. We have a lot of people from Parity and Web3 Foundation. Just get in contact with them if you're interested in some openings. And I actually forgot to ask, for who of you is this the first Polkadot meetup here? Oh, okay. Okay, didn't expect this. I thought actually all community was, but great. We tried to give you also a good introduction today to Polkadot and Kusama ecosystem, and again also welcome for you guys to be here with us. Another question: any one of you used the Parity signer? Okay, also some people, that's good. We also have currently a user experience survey going on. If you guys would like to take part of it, we have Raul here also. Raul? Where are you? There. Later on, just talk to him, and it would be cool if you can participate in the short survey and research, and of course, make the products just be better and user experience. Okay. Then we would start with the first presentation. Ben Weiß, he's ecosystem development lead at Parity, and very deeply involved in initiatives to support the ecosystem. I think also the Substrate build-up program, right? Yeah, and a lot of other cool stuff. So he will give us a short introduction about the ecosystem where we stand. All yours.
Hello. All right, let's see what I have here. Well, it's actually pretty nice to see so many people in person finally. We've been in contact with a lot of you guys, I think over the last year and a half, and it's really cool to see a lot of people. So, I'm Ben from Parity at the Ecosystem Success team, and what we do, we help a lot of teams in their support initiatives, or at the end of the day to become a parachain. And I want to give an overview of how the ecosystem looks at the moment, what it actually means to become a parachain at the end of the day, and what we can do in the future. So beginning with Polkadot, I was actually pretty happy that at least a couple of people said they'd never been to a Polkadot event, so I'm not completely off with my introduction slides where I said like, okay, Polkadot is this layer 0 multi-chain meta protocol that connects these parachains to the relay chain. Like the relay chain, we're coming in a second to it. So basically it is like a network that provides security as you go, as you pay. And you can customize a chain, a layer 1 chain to connect to it. So it's basically a sharded network, but you can customize the shards yourself. And we call the shards parachain at the end of the day. So that's on the right side is the Polkadot relay chain in the middle, like the grayish, and then you connect these different type of chains. And what is important, what can you build in the context of Polkadot? So it's 5 different types of chains or components that you can build. It's the parachain itself. So it's actually the parachain itself has maximum security, it has a lot of throughput, and you get the guarantee of the validation from Polkadot, the relay chain at the end of the day. If we talk about Parathread is very similar to a parachain. It has just not the throughput or the guarantees from the relay chain. And with the Substrate framework, you can also build independent chain or sovereign chain at the end of the day. What is the building blocks you can do on top of the parachain? This is like the smart contract deployments and the runtime palettes. And if we talk about runtime palettes, it's something very interesting that has not been really utilized, or we don't really see it a lot. So if a parachain gets a slot or the guarantees from the relay chain, you could actually, as a team, propose to a parachain team that you want to add your set of logic as a palette. And palette is very specific to Polkadot, so it's like a set of logic. We have this frame environment and a set of logic that builds in the palette and that gets added to the runtime. And the runtime itself is the state transition function from the parachain. So this is like this shard that it executes all the time. And it's like literally the 5 different ways you can build in a Polkadot ecosystem. And whenever I talk about Polkadot, it's very similar to Kusama. So Kusama is the same context as you would build on Polkadot. If we go into the comparison of the integration, so why are there these different integrations, and what is sort of the difference? It's really from how much effort it takes you to build something and how much effort it takes you to deploy it. So if we talk about an independent chain and a parachain, it takes a lot more effort and a lot more time to deploy it and to maintain it long term, but it's a lot more customizable. You can go down to the block production and change everything that you want at the end of the day. Whereas on the smart contract side, it's really like you're sort of like bounded in the availability or the possibilities of the smart contract, the execution engine at the end of the day. And that's like this comparison or the integration comparison, what is like the difference between the different deployments. So at the end of the day, it's just covering every step for a blockchain developer, and it's very specific to the team where you go and where you want to deploy at the end of the day, or what sort of integration you want to develop. So if we look back or go, what is the history and the evolvement of the parachains, like very focused on parachains, then we can separate them, or I think we can separate them in 3 phases. It has been a long time to develop the Substrate, the blockchain framework. Polkadot is built on top of Substrate or with Substrate. Kusama is built with Substrate. And Substrate at the end of the day is the basic underlying framework to build parachains with Cumulus in the context. And then over the last year, or a little bit more than a year, it was a lot of focus in the parachain readiness, getting parachain actually execute, getting them connected to the relay chain, trying this out. And what we see in the ecosystem as a next step is this adoption. So we have a lot of parachains coming to life, but now we need actually people to use it at the end of the day. So going back, like what is the Substrate evolution? What does it actually mean? I think a lot of you know these graphs. I think on the left side, it is like the adoption of, or the growth of the contributor or developer in the ecosystem compared with other blockchain ecosystems. And on the right side, it's like the growth of the count of the developer in the ecosystem over, like after the first commit. And you see that even like in the ecosystem, we see a lot of adoption when it comes to Rust and Substrate, and a lot of development in that sense. So over the last year, or over the, like, before the end of last year, we have seen a lot of contributions from ecosystem community teams or developers contributing back to Substrate. So it's like, it's grown, and this composability of Substrate in these palettes, like these modules, has grown and has enabled like an ecosystem where you have a lot of tools already pre-built, and you can reuse them later on in that step. And I think this is like the evolution of Substrate itself as we see it. What is currently, or like from the beginning of this year, it was this parachain readiness. So when can we connect the parachain to the relay chain, like Polkadot, Kusama, and it started all out in the beginning of the year with Rococo, the parachain testnet, getting live and connecting the first couple of parachains in the testnet. And what you see here are the two graphs that we continuously sort of monitor and overview. On the one side, it is a prediction from our side, or a projection from our side, where we think that teams are actually production ready. Like, how many teams do we think are ready to deploy their parachain by today or by a certain time? And how many on the other side? It's like, it's a screenshot from Rob's blog, but it's literally the overview of the stability of the Kusama network. So it's like, what is the block production, and is it like stable, or does it like variance a lot? And these two things, it's from the ecosystem, from our side, the two most important parts, that we have enough development and we have the performance from the relay chain to support enough parachains. And on the other side, continuously monitor the stability of the network itself. And we try to like line this out as much as possible. This is like from our projection, that's like data from the Builders program, what we're using. It's obviously not like all the teams in the ecosystem, but that's the teams that we know most of. And you see the further we predict in the future, the wider the spread is, like the biggest the unknown at the end of the day. So going into this reusability and seeing the technical reusability, that teams are actually reuse a lot of these predefined modules that are built from Polkadot to Kusama, we can actually see the same in the business case. So we see that almost all of the parachains, which are now connected to the relay chain on Kusama, have done a very similar launch of the parachain. So they have like a phased rollout. This is very similar what Kusama has done, what Polkadot has done. It's sort of, you develop something, you release it with a limited set of functionality. You have like maybe sudo or something like that. You have control over the parachain. If you're confident that it is working in the way that you think it is, then you add a new functionality. Then you add another new functionality till you're at the step that you're super confident with the parachain itself or the functionality you have, and you remove the sudo and open it up for the community. And that's like, I think it's very interesting from an ecosystem perspective, that it was like this composability, these Lego blocks that we say, okay, you develop something, you develop a piece of code, a functionality, in a way that you can reuse it, but it also comes in a business case, in a use case. So you have like business cases that get reused and that sort of like get shared in the ecosystem, and different teams learning from each other. What at the end of the day, we think reduces the time to market of blockchains dramatically, because it's like an ecosystem that learns from each other, and you have continuously new best practices on how to develop a blockchain. And that's going forward the future. So what will be the next challenges in the ecosystem, in the Polkadot ecosystem, or in the Kusama ecosystem, in the Substrate ecosystem? It's really, if we have these like this Polkadot commitments and developers, and they develop something, but we don't get adoption, it doesn't really make sense. So for us, it's now, how can we help the parachains to get actually the adoption, to get traction, to get transactions, to get usage at the end? And this is what is coming up. And it's a set of different things. It's like, it's the cross-chain interaction. If like chains can communicate with each other, that you have like an abstraction layer that the user don't necessarily interact with the blockchain or the parachain itself, like a specific parachain, but the functionality gets abstracted and you have like one interface to one for the user, and then everything happens behind sort of the wallet or wherever you interact with it. This is like an overview of what the industry looks like in the Polkadot ecosystem, how many teams are working on which functionalities. And I think going forward, it will be very interesting to see sort of mergers where we have combinations of different verticals or domains where they have like, I mean, the most well-known is definitely DeFi with NFT. There's a lot of stuff that we can think of right now. But it will also be in the future that suddenly we will be able to combine functionalities, domains that have not been able, like that we have not been able to combine previously. And that's something that we want to help out, or we see as our own challenge going forward to support. How do we support it? I don't know how familiar you are with the ecosystem itself, but we have definitely a lot of initiatives in the ecosystem that have like a high level of support. And on this graph you see in white, it's sort of like where's your project status, and in the middle is like what initiatives are available. So over the couple of last years, we have evolved all these initiatives for different projects and different stages of projects. But now it's sort of like a really big map, and we see the need of helping actually projects into navigating through the initiatives and support map. So going forward, what we started recently is a project or an initiative to help teams and projects in the ecosystem to address the right initiative for funding and support in the whole ecosystem. So what is next in this group of people? I think what we have seen and what is happening is parachains are going live in a fast pace. So we see a lot of parachains coming to life, and it will just get more and more. Smart contracts on these parachains, if it makes sense, are rather a commodity than something specific. So every smart parachain right now that has some sort of sense of getting smart contracts deployed will have the support for smart contracts. And we have all these ecosystem support projects at every stage. So it's really up to the user from now on to build something new, create big ideas, and say what can be this, what will a multi-chain future look different to something that we already have. So something, right now everybody thinks of interacting with one chain, and how does a token flow in this one chain, but how will a future look like where a token flows freely over multiple chains, where all these chains very specific built for a specific vertical or specific use case. And this would be very interesting from our side to see more and more, I call them crazy ideas, where people can just come up and think and want to try something out. And if we see this in the future, I would be more than happy to see this. And you're all invited to come up with proposals and reach out to us, and we are happy to connect with you and make this a reality. And with that, I'm opening for questions.
We take 2 questions now, and then we have more time for discussion later. And maybe you can take this one. And we would need some support to pass this mic, or we just pass it through here for the late to her, please. You had a question, right? Yeah.
Go for it. You want to go first? No, you go first.
Yeah. So you said that the next challenge is to increase adoption and to find new business use cases. So, like, how do you practically go about that? How do you go in search of new use cases?
Like new. Hello. New business cases is more like new business cases in the multi-chain adoption. So what is like the possibility of having a DeFi chain and having an NFT specific chain? That's more like new thinking out of the box on what is possible. And adoption is just like that we help building more toolings and more integrations on the ecosystem. So we rather think of building an ecosystem or community of communities than building like one big communities, because these chains, the parachains, they will evolve in very specific communities, because it's like a smart contract community, it's a DeFi community, something like that. And that's how we try to help the ecosystem teams building up their their communities themselves. And most probably will be a lot of sharing. What is marketing communications approach? What has Parity learned so far? How can we help in that sense? And also leveraging the brand of Polkadot and Parity a little bit more.
Okay, thank you.
So, thanks for your speech. And you were saying how one of the pathways from development to adoption would be to try to foster some sort of multi-variable approach to with regards to how a token might be able to travel along a chain. So what sort of incentives might you have to be able to encourage the developers to sort of think laterally or out of the box, so to speak, to be able such that they could derive products or solutions beyond more than just one single chain? And if we could sort of like get this message out across.
Yeah, of course. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a lot of like the restrictions that we have in the current systems. That's what we're trying to address and solve, right? It's stuff like bring your own gas. I mean, why do you have to buy Ether if you want to swap USDC on a DEX or something like that? Why can't you just like pay the gas fee in your USDC? I mean, this is like doesn't make sense. And if you talk to anybody who's using crypto, it's like, okay, now I have to, and he's new to crypto, and he has like a bunch of crypto from somebody, and he wants to exchange them in something. He has always to buy the native chain token, and this is like something from a usability or from a use case. It's very annoying at the end of the day. And this is like where we think these new possibilities will attract a lot of developers, because they have not been able or stuff like that has not been able before.
Cool. Thank you. Okay, thanks, Ben, again. Let's see if you can use this. Okay, next up, Santi. He's going to talk about, Santiago. Now I have to check again, but you are ecosystem success manager. And he's going to give us a more technical introduction into actually the slot auction, parachain auction process. Also where we're standing now, what's happening. If you guys have some questions afterwards, happy to take them on as well.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
All right. So, hello everybody. It's a bunch of people here today. That's awesome. Thank you very much for coming. I'll try to not repeat a lot of things that Ben has said, right? I think that some things get together there, but I'm going to be touching on the concept of parachain auction process. But for that, we need to kind of like rewind a little bit, right? Understand why in the first place we need auctions, right? So what is this concept of auctions and why do we need them? So Ben was talking before about this concept of the relay chain and how the relay chain provides the security guarantees to all these parachains that are connected around it, right? Think of Polkadot, and again, as Ben said, Polkadot and Kusama are a bit interchangeable here because technically they provide the same service. But think of Polkadot being responsible for having a very strong and healthy community of validators that in the end will be assigned to these different parachains, right? And will help validate their state transitions, right? So every single time a new parachain will want to transition its state, right, is the relay chain that in the end actually provides those security guarantees. But by being connected to Polkadot as well, right, what you can benefit from is this ability of these layer 1 chains communicating between each other, right, which is also something that it's quite new in this in the blockchain space. We've seen in the last couple of years a lot of layer 1s very successful, but without the ability of connecting on a more natively manner, right? And by being connected to one of these slots, to the relay chain, either Polkadot or Kusama, you're benefiting from this as well. But the thing here, and the tricky part of this, is that there's not infinite number of slots, right? There's not infinite number of people actually connecting, right? So the big question is, how do we decide who actually gets a slot, and well, what is a slot, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit about slots, right? So slots in itself are these kind of like placeholders where all these layer 1 parachains are connecting to, right? Our objective with Polkadot and Kusama is to reach these first 100 parachains, which will be distributed a bit different than one might expect. Between 10 to 30 of these slots will be occupied by what we know as common good chains, right? These are chains that are actually providing some sort of service to the entire ecosystem. Like, for example, we've got StateMine right now connected on Kusama. StateMine is an assets chain, right, that is trying to be this assets hub for the entire Kusama ecosystem, and kind of like takes off that functionality from the relay chain so that the relay chain can concentrate on doing its job the best that it can and providing like the best sort of functionality and service to these parachains. Other things that we might be seeing here are, I don't know, a bridges, a common good parachain maybe, a governance common good parachain, staking common good parachain, right? Trying to just remove these things from the relay chain and letting the relay chain only take care of the security guarantees. On top of that, we're going to have around 40 to 90 more or less, and these are, again, expectations, right? Don't take the number as like a proper number, but between 40 to 90 slots, that will be auction slots, right? These are the ones that we're seeing right now happening. In fact, there's a slot auction happening like right now, which is quite interesting. If you want to check it out afterwards, there are like interesting things happening there. But this is what we're going to be talking about in a couple of slides. And lastly, we have this slots for parathreads, which will be able to accommodate around 50 parathreads per block, right? But let's concentrate a little bit on the one right in the middle, the list slots, and let's talk about these auctions, right? And that is the presentation. So this idea of auctions and the way that auctions are actually built on Polkadot is based on something that was quite popular in the 17th and 18th century called the English auction, right? And the idea here is that back then, people were kind of like asked to put forward bids, right, that they thought were the actual bid that was going to win, because you never knew exactly when the auction was finishing, right? The ending moment of the auction was never known. And the way that they managed to do this, which is quite interesting, is by lighting up a candle. So the moment the auctioneer would light up a candle, the moment the auction started, right, everybody would start playing the bids, and the moment that candle went off, the auction finished. And the highest bid at that moment in time was actually the winning bid, right? What was interesting, though, and for me it's funny, I'm sorry that I'm laughing, but people would actually place a bid and just start like blowing or doing something for that candle to actually go off, right? But the idea here with this is that this kind of mechanism actually allows for a healthier price discovery, because since you never know when things are going to end, you'll always try to put forward your best bid. And it also discourages this like end minute snipping, right? What will happen at eBay, that you were about to win something and the last second somebody put 1 more cent and you lost that, I don't know, whatever that could be. So the way that we do this on-chain, right, is as follows. Auctions on Polkadot have like these 2 periods, right? First, we've got the opening period. In Kusama, opening period is 2 days. And this is where everybody starts like putting their bids on the table and showing their cards, right? At this moment in time, nothing happens. It's just more like everybody testing the water and understanding what's going on. After these 2 days on Kusama, we start with the ending period, and this is the moment that the candle gets lighted up, right? Any of these blocks from the ending period till the actual end of the auction, which in Kusama is 5 days, could be that moment the candle went off, right? Or that winning block. So what happens here is that we have this opening period of 2 days, these 5 more days of the actual ending period, right, where the auction happens. And when all of that finishes, the next block runs what we call the VRF, which is an algorithm that randomly chooses one of the blocks of this ending period, right? And whichever block that is, it's going to be the ending block, or the block that the candle went off, and whichever people or project or projects, we're going to see about that in a minute, actually place the bid here are the ones that are going to win that slot. But the cool thing about all of this is that for anybody that has KSM slots, for any token holder, the only actual cost that this has is an opportunity cost. Because the moment that you contribute to a project for that project's auction, right, after the slot is done, so after the entire duration of the slot that the project has ends, you're going to get your tokens back, right? Or if the team doesn't really win the auction, the moment their crowd loan ends, and we're going to talk about that in a minute as well, you're going to get your tokens back. So in the end, the idea here is you're a token holder. I'm going to put these tokens forward for this particular parachain to be part of the ecosystem because I think they're good for A, B, C, D, or they're giving me whatever, or I'm going to do other things with those tokens, right? That is the cost of opportunity that you need to balance out here when deciding to participate on a parachain auction. Just 1 minute. And there we go. So auction slots on Polkadot, the slot itself, it's actually divided by periods. The slot in Polkadot lasts 2 years, and each list period, it's consisted of 8 periods of 3 months each. So 8 times 3, 24, the math adds up, perfect. And the idea here is that project, I actually do that on my head. And the thing here is that projects can either go for all the periods of that particular slot or can go for a subset of periods, right? And this is where things start getting a bit more interesting. On Kusama, on the other hand, slots are a bit shorter, right? Slots are 48 weeks long, and it's actually, again, eight slots of 6 weeks duration each, right? But again, the same concept here applies where a team can actually auction for a specific period of this entire slot. So to understand this a little bit more, let's go to a very simple example here. Let's assume for a minute that this was the ending block of a specific auction at one moment in time. So for that specific auction, right, and that moment in time, Alice there said, I want to get all the possible periods of that particular slot, and I'm going to pay 200 whatever tokens per period, which in the end is 1,600, right? 1,600 tokens for that entire slot. At the same time, Bob came and said, hey, I don't want all the periods, right? I just want the first 2 periods, and I'm willing to pay 100 tokens per period, which is 200 tokens. But then Charlie said, I don't want all the periods either, right? I just want the last 6 periods, and said, I would like to pay 300 per period, which is 1,800. So if you see there, between Bob and Charlie, right, they're splitting that specific slot into different periods, and between both of them, the actual combined, the actual combined token allocation is 2,000 tokens, right? Which is bigger than 1,600. So although Alice as a project put 1,600, these 2 other projects combined for the same slots in different periods won this particular auction, okay? And now the question is, we talked about the slots, right, where people could connect. We talk about the auctions, which is the process by which you can get the slot. And then come the crowd loans, right, which is how these projects actually raise these tokens. And the idea with crowd loans is that crowd loans in itself are a fundraising system that allow for any token holders, right, DOT, Kusamas, or whatever whatever relation you are at, right, to actually participate and add tokens to this particular project, right, through the crowd loan module. The crowd loan module in itself is also responsible of guarding those tokens, right? And the moment that either the crowd loan is finished because the team didn't win the auction, or the list period is up because the team just finished the entire period of that they list out, you're going to get your tokens back, right? So is the crowd loan module the one that has that logic inside? And finally, teams or projects themselves, right, are actually encouraged to just put a set of incentives around for the community for them to offer for their tokens in return, right? So that is how more or less the crowd loan module works. And there are a couple of do's and don'ts for these crowd loan modules that I think are interesting, specifically if you're more of token holder, right? The first one has to do with paying attention to when these auctions are being announced by the actual governance of each chain, right, of Kusama and Polkadot, because the thing here is that in Kusama, if you got your tokens staked, right, you need 7 days to unstake them, and in Polkadot you need 28 days, right? And you need those tokens to be liquid in order to participate of these crowd loans. So whenever you hear that governance of each chain says, hey, I'm gonna open an auction in X amount of days, just make sure that you can free up your tokens, dots, or KSMs in order to participate of the crowd loan. And then, of course, research on the project that you're contributing to, right? Make sure that you know what they're doing, what they're bringing to the ecosystem, that you've seen them testing their things out, right? Ben mentioned before Rococo, West End, so make sure that you've seen those chains actually testing their stuff before going live. That is also very, very important. And there are a couple of don'ts as well, right? So we talked about this idea of with the crowdloan module, whenever you put your tokens, you ensure, right, that you're gonna get them back. The moment you, instead of doing that, you give them to another person, that person tells you, I'm gonna put them on the crowdloan for you, the only one that has guarantee that will get the tokens back is that third person, right, not you. So make sure that you contribute directly to the crowdloan module. And lastly, just don't lock up all your funds on the first crowdloan that you see, right? Just make sure that there's gonna be 100 parachains on Kusama, 100 on Polkadot. Just play around and get as much as you can from each of them, right? But these are, this is a bit of the crowdloan module in itself. But all that we've been talking so far seems fairly technical and more like an idea, but it's actually happening right now in Kusama, right? And this is a bit of the past and the present of the Kusama auctions. So right now, what you're seeing there are the 9 parachains that are right now connecting to Polkadot, to Kusama, and producing blocks, right? You've got State Mine right there, the first one, this common good chain, right, that it's connected and it's producing block. And all the other 8 parachains are actually community parachains that went through the auction process, opened the crowd loans, engaged with the community, and got the slot for connecting to Kusama. But besides that, when you look at this list, what you're seeing like a common good chain, you're seeing DeFi, you're seeing smart contracts, you're seeing privacy, you're seeing identity. If this is not a multi-chain present rather than future, I don't know exactly what that is, right? So this is quite interesting in my opinion. But to put a bit more numbers around that, right? We had so far in all the auctions that started on Kusama, 23 different teams actually opened their crowd loans. Between the 8 that won, 1.7 million Kusamas have been locked in the crowd loan module for the duration of their slot. That is around 15% of the total issuance of Kusama. And lastly, we had over 44,000 people, unique addresses contributing to these different projects, which is, I don't know, it's amazing. So we discussed about this idea of the relay chains having slots, because slots are not infinite, right? And people need to win them. In order to win them, you need to win an auction. In order to win an auction, you need to raise money through the crowd loans. But yeah, that was everything I had to talk about today. I hope you enjoyed it. And if anybody has any questions, just let me know.
Change the microphone again. Okay. Yeah, one question here directly.
Well, thank you, Santiago. I have one question regarding the period for the auctions.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that it would make sense maybe for projects to just have a limited period of participation, of being a parachain for a limited period of time. Do you have example you can name?
So far, we haven't seen any of those, right? So far, all the auctions that have happened are teams that went through the entire duration of periods. We saw only one team betting for one period on the first 5 auctions, but we haven't seen that happening a lot. I think that we're going to see a bit more of that when power threads are enabled, because the idea here is that whenever you win a parachain slot and you just don't get the list right after, right, you will default to a power thread, right? And given that the power thread is still being developed as a model right now, we're not seeing any of those cases just yet. But yeah, it's just a matter of waiting a bit more time, and we'll definitely see a couple of them winning slots for sure. Thank you. Any other question? Yep.
How do you prevent parachain squatters?
What do you mean with parachain squatters?
Like somebody just taking a bunch of money, buying a parachain, and then trying to resell it?
I mean, that could happen, right? If they manage to convince the community and go for it, it could happen. However, I think that on average, each parachain slot is going for 200,000 KSMs. That's a bit of a lot of money, right? To then run the risk of not reselling. So I think that it could happen, yes, but the risk is quite low.
Okay, one more question there in the back, and then. Yeah.
Hi, and thanks for the talk. Let's assume I can borrow a lot of money. Then I would buy a lot of Polkadot with this money, get into the auction, get all my money back, so basically, and then pay back the loan. So basically, I got for free on Polkadot. So what would stop that? You know what I mean?
But you get the money, you get the dots once your lease finishes, right? So in Polkadot, it's 2 years. I'm going to be sitting on 2 years.
Okay, then you would lose it for 2 years. Okay, all right. Thank you.
That's the thing, yeah.
Cool. Whoops, sorry. Okay, everyone who has another question, just keep them on because we will go into more discussion later. We just have a fireside chat now, and then we will keep some time for discussion later on. Okay. Just move this. You guys can come up, please. It's you that talk in the fireside chat, so. Cool, thanks. Maybe we do.
Maybe we can do with one.
With one is fine too. Okay. Maybe then this one, and then we use this for the.
Okay.
Oh no, use this one first. And then. Okay. Yeah. Good time to get some more drinks there. That's true. I think the food is already done. But okay, wait, I just have to see. Okay. Yeah, but you have to answer everything. Okay, guys. I mean, we had a short introduction, but I actually always like to have guys.
Hello.
We can do some more networking later on, but it's great to see that everyone is talking with each other. Yeah, I mean, we had a short introduction about you two guys, but I always like to open up these conversations to hear again your motivation, actually your personal motivation, working on stuff what you just present, working on the Web3, the new generation internet.
Oh, interesting. Well, my background is like I'm coming from data science and machine learning and working on like different companies mostly in media. Just have seen that like the amount of data that gets scraped from people without them knowing is just like insane. And I think this whole thing that we're building here is one way to prevent it going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that definitely is a reason, right? I would add as well. So I come from Argentina, right? I come from Latin America, and this definitely opens the door for a lot of possibilities, right? That people that I know didn't have before. So working and trying to provide a bit of that is something that I find like I do find a lot of passion on doing that. And let's hope we can achieve one day that massive adoption, right? But I've seen firsthand how it is to just be left out, and it's not nice. So yeah, let's hope we can achieve it.
Great, thank you. Let's keep it there. Okay, we directly jump into more of the parachain questions and start auctions. We've just seen like an overview, right? We have currently 8 parachains online or live, 9 with StateMine, like the common good parachain. And the Polkadot parachains or slot auctions are coming up. Why would a chain that's currently live on Kusama or maybe not live yet go on Polkadot or maybe not join the slot auctions on Polkadot?
I'd say that we've been listening things the other way around, right? People actually saying, I want to go to Polkadot and probably not to Kusama, right? Because Polkadot has bigger security guarantees. It's a bit more bigger of a network, right? Versus Kusama, that's this wild casting where wild things happen, right? And so in general, I've seen things the other way around. I wouldn't know what to say about teams just going to Kusama, right? Because again, I never had that discussion. But for Polkadot in itself, it's been always about how Polkadot, it's a bit of a more mature network always, right? It provides more security. It's a bit of more robust. It has more security guarantees through because it has a bigger market cap, and through the proof of stake, right? You need a bigger market cap. So I've heard it the other way around, I'd say. I don't know, Ben, if you know anything.
Yeah, I mean, the whole premise of Kusama is literally expect chaos. So I would say if you really want to go like production ready and have like a big market cap behind your chain, then it's most probably the way to go to Polkadot. And all the parachains that we're seeing right now, it's rather the question on what is the Kusama chain for, or what is the purpose of the Kusama chain once they get a Polkadot slot at the end of the day. And it has its purpose of being like this incentivized network to try different things, but I think the long-term goal for most of them is like going to, or for all of them is going to Polkadot.
Okay, but could you say that maybe the Kusama ecosystem is bigger or will be bigger because it's maybe easier to access for parachains, and when we then have bridges that you actually can communicate with more bridges than with more chains than on Polkadot? You see it from the access point of view?
But I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question that much. It's like the Kusama ecosystem bigger than Polkadot's ecosystem?
Yeah, let's say
I don't see it that way either, right?
Okay.
So the main difference that you've got right now is that all these parachains are going live on Kusama because it's where parachains can go live, right? And with this expect chaos and wildcasting of Kusama being of Polkadot, right? That is the entire purpose. Let's make sure that all our parachain code is bulletproof before we actually implement that on Polkadot. And the moment that goes live on Polkadot, the Polkadot ecosystem will definitely be bigger, right? So it's just a matter of time and of the development cycles that we have for Polkadot and Kusama. The other thing that you mentioned there was bridges, right? And it is not like that at the moment. Bridges will be available for Polkadot, right? And it's where people will start using and bringing assets from other chains for sure.
Okay. Going more into the crowd loans, as we just heard how to contribute actually to a crowd loan, this may be also something that parachains or parachains teams have faced more, because they actually wanted to have it more accessible to a lot of people to join a crowd loan, right? So they also cooperated or partner with some exchanges, because you can actually contribute to a crowd loan via the Polkadot JS, like the direct interface, or you have your coins on an exchange, so you actually contribute through this. Were there, for you guys in the Parity team, actually some challenges that you guys faced to make this accessible, or that you got some feedback from the parachain teams that struggle with this, or because it's just a different technical setup, right?
I can try. I mean, on the one side, I think it's two different things. It's on the one side, it's the integration of the contribution to the crowd loan, actually. I mean, the whole sidecar thing that exchanges need to set up to actually contribute from their side through the exchanges or the tech stack the exchange has itself. On the other side, I think it's from, can we talk about the parachain itself? It's a good way to incentivize teams to contribute, but at the same time, it's completely against this whole permissionless thing. And it's always the trade-off that we currently see, or we see in the space. It's where is the trade-off between easy of use versus being like really trustless, and I think that's like the biggest challenge. That's how I would say it.
No, definitely. And adding to that point that you said at the end, is this that thing that we discussed that I was saying before, where ideally you would just put the money directly or the tokens directly onto the crowd itself, right? If you're giving it to a third party, they need to trust that third party will give it back to you the moment that things end, right? And exchanges have been a very good way of teams to getting more adoption, right, to broader people and other people, which has been amazing, but it all comes with trade-offs, as Ben has been saying, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and let's say a little bit on this technical architecture view. When it now comes to the crowd loans, or let's say parachains going live on Polkadot, for the parachain teams itself, are there big technical differences what they have to be prepared for? Let's say being live on Kusama, of course, it's a different protocol, but let's say, is it a big difference, a big effort for them to actually be prepared?
Yeah, that's a good question, and the answer is no. The code that's on Polkadot is exactly the same as the one that has been bulletproofed on Kusama before, and what you need to do to connect to Polkadot is the same people did or projects did to connect to Kusama. So there's not much of a difference there in terms of technicalities on what to do, right? It will be different probably how people will incentivize the community, right? How they will be going out to make sure that they have enough dots in the case of Polkadot, or how competition will be for the auctions, but technically the connection is the exact same thing.
Okay, interesting. Go.
Was it meant to be done on purpose, like the fact that there isn't so much of a technical difference between both platforms?
Definitely.
The fact that you were supposed to
Yeah.
lower the sort of the barriers for entry between, or like interoperability between both platforms.
We actually do the same with the test networks. If we talk about Rococo and West End, we try to have all the parachain teams connect to one of these test networks before, because it's like literally 100% the same. And it's always like a little bit of a difference if you run something locally and you try it locally, because you use like different networks or different protocols on your local machine, versus having something distributed in the web all over the world. And it's from stuff like the collators are not reaching the validators because they're located in a different region and stuff like that. And that's what we're trying. But at the end of the day, like how you bid for the auction and how you open the crowd loan, it's 100% the same on all the networks.
I will just continue with some more questions, then we open up to the audience again. Okay. Also, again, more on the technical side, but and you mentioned it today a little bit, the cross-consensus messaging format, right? Yeah. Gavin just put out 2 very good articles about it. If you guys are interested in just learning more about it, how chains can actually send messages or using this format, you should check it out. Also, again, a question to like Parachains teams. How should they need to be prepared for using this type of format? Is it something that's been implemented through an update, or from a technical perspective, but also maybe from a business development side, to actually use this format then?
Me? So technically, I'd say that there's 2 things that come to mind. The first one is that the version of XCM that will be going live to Kusama shortly comes with Polkadot 9.10, so probably you will need to update the runtime of the actual parachain to make sure that your XCM messages will be compatible with the relay chains. But then between these parachain teams, what you need to open is a communication channel with this parachain team, right? And that is where technicality comes together with BD, where you need to make sure that the other team accepts your communication channel, right? So you have to have that communication offline first to just tell the team, hey, let's communicate. And that's where you open the actual channel. For sure, most probably, these 2 parachains will have their own governance systems, and they will need to go to vote and whatnot, and things will be approved afterwards. But that is on the technical side of things. And the other thing that is quite important, right, was in line of like trusting this other parachain, right? When you open a communication channel directly with a parachain, you need to trust that that other parachain will not forfeit your tokens or will not do nothing that you just don't agree with. And that is the other risk that you are going forward. For that, there's going to be another protocol called SPRE, or SPRE, or SPREE, right? I never said that correctly, which will allow these parachain teams to actually do not trust each other, right, and have this trustless connection. But for now, with XCM, you need to trust what the other team is doing as well.
And I think one more thing to add is like when teams start to play around with XCM or started out and tried, there's a ton of toolings that help you to set it up locally and start to trying out. So you don't really need to be connected to a test network or to something that is live by trying out XCM. And there's also like simulations and benchmarking, so you can actually sort of play ping pong between 2 parachains and get familiarized with, or like familiar with this technology and how it works.
Cool. Okay. One more question, because we both have, you guys see us sitting from Parity, and maybe something that not everyone will ask. I mean, the ecosystem picks up a lot of ideas, right? And you just motivate everyone to say, hey guys, let's build on more or crazy ideas in the ecosystem. But sometimes there are things that you as Parity, I mean, you came up with Substrate, with the framework to say, hey, this is really a necessary or useful framework or tool for the ecosystem. Is there something currently that you guys are working on that you could share to say this is something the ecosystem has not picked up yet, but we think it's, or what you could see, you know, that would be useful? Can be any a tool, a framework, and your parachain idea like.
Well, for me, it's definitely sort of small dot or subconnect, like a node that you can actually run in your browser and that's connecting to the network. So seeing like the latest activities around the world in the context of crypto, I think it's like very easy or very important that we have like censorship resistance implementation. That means if you open a web page, you're not connecting to an endpoint that is hosted on a server and controlled by some company in some country. You're actually running like a very tiny light client node in your browser, and you just connect to the network. So this prevents really this idea of being censorship, being decentralized, and having access to it. And I haven't really seen any, like, I know that we use it in the Polkadot application since a couple of weeks, months maybe. You can actually connect through the Polkadot network through Light Client or Subconnect, I think. But I haven't seen it in the community by like getting really picked up by a project or by a team.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe I could add two more things. One is bridges, right? We've got the Substrate to Substrate bridge that has been developed by Parity, and it's probably going live quite shortly, connecting directly Polkadot and Kusama, right, and allowing these two communities to start interchanging value on a trustless way. And the second one is we are working as well on helping teams that have a solo chain, right, and that want to connect to and become a parachain, helping with that transition and making sure that they can do this transition from a solo chain to a parachain, which is not straightforward thing to do, and trying to put some tools there to help them transition.
Cool. Very cool. Okay, now we have some questions from the online community on Crowdcast. I just got them sent over here, and then we open it up also to the audience here. Someone asked, is there, let's start here, is there or since Parachain auctions on Kusama and then on Polkadot will be going live soon, can there be a time where both of these auctions actually happen simultaneously?
I don't see why not. No, I don't see why not. Yeah.
I think, of course, yeah. I mean, the whole thing is literally managed through the governance and the council, and whenever the council opens another slot, they will be in parallel. And going forward, like after the year or 48 weeks, we will have continuous follow-up for auctions for the one that we loaned out by now. I don't know if that is the right way to say it, but I think we will definitely see times where we have like multiple, where we have auctions open on both networks at the same time.
Exciting. Okay, then you have to be very aware what's going on in the ecosystem. And for a staker, like what's the typical min or max of DOT allowed for staker in a crowd loan? I think this will come, yeah, but please.
Okay, not for staking on like
to contribute to the crowd actually, yeah.
So for Kusama, the minimum right now is 0.1 KSMs. And the maximum would be the cap that a team has, but the caps have been 400,000 KSMs. Akala had 1.5 million KSMs, so I think there's no actual like max.
Yeah.
And for DOT, we just don't know yet. There might be something we have 0.1 in KSMs, probably more than 0.1, but yeah, I don't have an explicit number, no.
Okay.
And not max, no max.
Yeah, we heard this. Okay, I think this was everything from crowd. If there are more questions coming in online, just let me know. And now more questions from the audience, please. And maybe, yeah, this, oops. And we tried this one, 1, 2.
Thank you very much. You said that Kusama is less secure than Polkadot, but what does it actually mean? Like what can happen on Kusama, and maybe even what happened on Kusama, what couldn't happen on Polkadot?
Well, I think it's pretty much on the market cap. Like the volume that is like the market cap that is behind the network is less on Kusama than on Polkadot, and therefore the security guarantees are less. Like in the incentives for miscellaneous validators is less on Kusama than it's higher on Polkadot and less on Kusama, if that is the right one. And that's from the security guarantee of the network. And it's also that, in general, if we talk about the code, it's more likely that there's unaudited code on Kusama than on Polkadot. So on Polkadot, 100% the code will always be audited. In Kusama, it was always the idea of getting stuff out early, testing it, and trying it out. But from a plain security perspective, it's like the market cap that is behind the network, or not just the market cap, the value of staked tokens at the end of the day.
This means like a 51% attack, but doesn't proof of stake take care of that? I mean, if somebody like gets a lot of money and attacks the security, then the rest is saying, okay, fuck you, we're burning your tokens. So wouldn't that, I mean...
What is that?
So, I mean, with proof of stake, I mean, having a lot of money, buying into the staking.
You're talking about hard forks, and it's not possible to hard fork Polkadot or Kusama.
No, I think it's like the ability to have, like, if you say there's a certain amount of tokens in the elected set for validators, and somebody is able to capture more than 51% of these, like 50% of these tokens, then he would literally be able to control the validators. But now we're talking about, you would have to manipulate Fragment in that sense, because like Fragment is the algorithm that distributes the nomination of tokens to different validators. This means you would have to have a very set amount of tokens that gets exactly to the validators that you control, right? At the end of the day, you want to control, I mean, controlling this more than 50% of tokens in the elected set doesn't help you a lot if you want to attack the network. You want to control more than 50% of the validators in this network. And there is like another layer between. So you have the tokens, but then you need to ensure that these tokens are allocated to the validators that you control, and you have more validators than 50% of the total validators at the end of the day.
And I have a second question, if I may ask. Like Charles Hoskinson, the Cardano guy, recently said in an interview that the vision for Cardano is to enable every person on the world the same access to the financial system, like regardless of him being Bill Gates or a rice farmer from Zimbabwe. Like, how would you formulate the vision of Polkadot?
Good question. Deliver on the Web3 promises. It's like being sovereign, being like in control of your data, being in control in your financial system. And I think that's like a lot more than just having access to a bunch of tokens.
And I would say if Cardano wants to be a parachain, he has a slot, right? So it's like this whole meta protocol idea. It's like one layer below.
All right, thank you.
He can bid for a slot. We don't know if he's going to get it.
On the vision part, I mean, it's just how I perceive it, right? And you both said in your presentations, it's the multi-chain vision, right? That's that Polkadot really creates. And yeah.
I'm wondering, are there any projects that any of you are particularly like excited about that are like moonshot projects that are coming up?
The alpha leaks?
I mean, there are a lot of projects that are very good. But like...
we don't have bad projects, that's the problem.
Yeah. But thinking about like moon projects, just do your own research and see what you want to put your money, I guess. But I do believe that, and being completely transparent here, right? If you look at the list of projects that we've seen before, right? All these layer ones, like how much more difficult it is to actually build a layer one versus building a smart contract, what it needs to do, not only the development of the protocol itself, but rather on maintaining and having that being live, right? Think of this as having their own network of collectors as well, right? It's quite hard. And all these projects are very, very, very qualified projects. So they might not moon on one of these cycles, right? But long term, it's probably a good idea, I guess. Yeah.
I have a question about the long-term vision of the ecosystem.
Yeah.
When I first understood crowdloans, I kind of thought of it like the internet. And if you made the internet in the 90s, millions of dollars to join, it would be you wouldn't have the internet. Now I know that's a pretty bad comparison once you really start to understand how the crowd loans work. But where do you see it going, say, several years down the road? Are there going to be thousands of slots? So are you going to incentivize many more projects to join so you get these network effects? Or kind of where do you see that going?
100%, right? And it's not about probably, and I'm not saying this with a lot of knowledge maybe, but it's not probably around having more slots on one parachain, right? By having, on one relay chain, I'm sorry, but by having these nested relay chains, right? When you can escalate all around the place, and that is where you get infinite slots, right? If you manage to actually escalate these relay chains, there's a lot of network effects to be done there.
And I think also the idea of parathreads, where you don't have like, you don't really need a parachain running, like a chain running all the time if you don't have like a high throughput or something. But you need, like in certain situations, some sort of validation guarantee from some service, and being able to connect quickly and get this validation guarantee is like this whole idea of parathreads. If you execute something in your browser and you want to get like a validation of this data is correct and it's not like manipulated by somebody in between, you can connect very quickly and pay as you go through a parathread. So this might be something interesting as well going forward.
Mm-hmm. Okay, before more questions come up, we had some more questions from online. You talked about, what was it earlier? The audits. We know Polkadot just went through, or the code just went through like an audit. Can you guys just give some feedback on it, how everything was? Like, just, yeah. If you guys can talk about it, but it was one question.
It looks
Security.
good.
Okay, good.
As far as I know, or what we have heard, the feedback is good. It is currently looked into, and this is literally the last step going forward for Polkadot.
Yeah, same thing I heard.
Mm-hmm.
So far everything's looking good. And thinking of the steps that Ben was mentioning before, right, we said about this idea of having network stability on Kusama that has been proven already. There's a very nice blog post from Rob talking about that after the first 5 parachains.
Mm-hmm.
Auctions, right, which what Ben was saying, auctioning all that code, which is looking quite good. And finally, disputes, which are right now being battle tested on Rococo as well and have been audited too. So I think we're getting somewhat close.
Mm-hmm. And then we have a lot of questions about timelines and next lot auction stuff. And therefore, I would just recommend you guys follow everyone, or follow Parity, follow Web3 Foundation. They have like official channels where updates are being posted, and the people that are actually working on the stuff also post updates on Twitter, Medium posts. So because talking about timelines is always
it's very difficult to predict, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always so many moving pieces, right? That for us, the best thing to do is actually look into the facts of the things that we need to do, right?
Yeah.
So we need to finish the audits. We need to make sure that Kusama was working. Disputes need to be running on Rococo well, right? So when all of that package is done, it's just then a matter of somebody presenting to the on-chain council, right, and saying, hey, are you guys ready to open a motion to go for slots? And if the governance council decides it's a good idea, then slots get open, right? So in the end, the last piece is that motion starting on chain, so that things can get moving. But just my recommendation that with timelines is that given that it's impossible to actually know an exact date, just keep on track of the things that we think need to be done before going live.
And I just mentioned,
I can say some date, but I don't know how much.
Just want to add on the motions, the referendums that are posted. There's also the open channel Polkadot directions on Discord. Yeah, Raul is managing it very well. So if you guys
direction, Kusama direction.
right, you can just see what's up in the council. And as Santi just said, like the last steps always to push these motions out, and then the council votes on it. So there you would also have a good track on what's going on.
Yeah, and usually what's going to happen, it happened in Kusama before, so it's probably going to happen in Polkadot as well. The motion will start with saying, let's open these auctions in X amount of days so that people can stake their tokens, right? So in Polkadot, you'll have 28 days at the very least. So just keep an eye on those channels.
Cool. More questions from the audience. There. Yeah, sorry. Here's the mic.
So if I understood, the parachains are standalone blockchains, which also have the smart contract, the platform capability, right?
The parachains you said?
Yeah, the parachains.
They're not standalone chains.
Okay.
Parachains are actually connected to this relay chain.
Okay, so they get the security from the
relay chain.
Relay chains.
Correct.
So when they are not connected, so they have to buy the slots.
Yeah.
So when they don't have the slots, are they still functioning? I mean, is the transaction still happening, and how does that work?
That's a very good question. So right now there are two options onto that, right? One will be para-threads, as Ben was mentioning before, where you pay as you go model. So it's a bit more on the, I need this set of blocks being validated by the relay chain. You just pass those blocks as a POV, and you say for these 10 blocks, I'm willing to pay 2 Kusamas, whatever that could be, and you get them validated, right? But you always continue functioning as a para-thread. Or you can launch your own standalone chain, right? And then transition to a parachain, which is something that right now is not very easy, a very straightforward thing to do. And at the same time, you will need to make sure that you've got your validator set for your standalone chain as well, which is another a difficult task to take on board. But those are the two things that I would recommend right now.
But once you are a parachain, you are automatically a parathread. Like,
exactly.
Okay.
Once you connect us, I mean, parathreads will pay us as they go, right? So it's fine. You will not need to bid for a parathread slot.
Okay. My next question is, so where should one start? Like, if I understood, so Substrate is the, like, building blocks where one can start building. So where, is that where people start, or where is it?
Correct. Do you want to tell them what?
I would just point, there's like substrate.dev, it's like the developer hub, and there's like a bunch of tutorials on how to start your different chains, and it depends where you want to go. If like you're looking into a solo chain, into a parachain, it depends a little bit where you go, but the framework for building parachains is Cumulus. There's like also a link for Cumulus workshop, and Cumulus is literally just like a different version of Substrate that adds a bunch of functionalities that you need to connect to a relay chain. But it's all based on Substrate, and that's the way to go with the tutorials, I guess, if that answers your question.
Okay, so if I don't know anything about all these things, so the first thing is Cumulus. I should, that's what you suggest?
Or the Substrate tutorial, like substrate.dev, it's substrate.dev, and there's like the development environment for anybody who wants to get into Substrate or the Polkadot ecosystem at all. There's like from beginner tutorials to all sort of documentation and versions of to learn it.
Thank you.
Cool.
So, Santiago, you were mentioning earlier about, I mean, like both Ben and Santiago could answer, of course, like this idea with creating standalone chains as well as being able to sort of collaborate on like a combined parachain. Would you sort of have any sort of recommendations as to what sort of any sort of differences in the end goal between both of them are? And also, have you got any, would you sort of say that there are any sort of differences in security measures between either of them?
There's definitely differences in security measures to start with, right? And that is why, answering the first question first, my recommendation would always be to try to aim for this either parachain or parathread, because you'll then get all the security guarantees from the relay chain, which will be always bigger than what you can achieve as a solo chain, unless you are, you manage to get a very, very big community behind you, right? Which is quite hard. It's a big, big undertaking. So my first recommendation there would be to always try to aim for a parachain or parathread slot, right? And from there, taking it over. The reason why some people start off with a solo chain, right? I mean, you've got the other people here, right? They've been running their chain for 2 years. There was no slots 2 years ago, right? So they just went live. But eventually someday they might want to go to a parachain slot. And that is why one of the things that we were mentioning before is that we are working together with teams that want to transition from a solo chain to a parachain because they started again a couple of years back, and helping them on that transition as well. And Ricardo over there is working on that if you want to ask him afterwards.
Okay. I think we have a lot of questions answered now. Also nothing more from the live stream. Thank you guys, first of all. Thank you again. Thank you for the insightful presentations and also answering all the questions. We have some more time. I think the space open until 9, right? To do some more networking. Guys, just we have more drinks there, some more swag and T-shirts for you. And just to summarize, I think we gave a great overview about Polkadot in general, and also went into the crowd loans and auction process in detail. And we also have lot of people here from the ecosystem. We have the Kilt protocol here, the team. We have the Noodle team here. So if you have specific questions to them, just get in. Yeah. Oh, cool. Get and connect with each other. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.